The Other Side of Fear, a Backpacker's Memoir by Jenny Rivas. Unhidden Heroines Series, Book Number 1. Chapter 23. Nevertheless, she persisted. The next day, those wonderful hostel owners pulled me in for a heartfelt hug as they dropped me off at the bus terminal. I faced a long ride back to Medellin where I would stay the night at Hernan's before heading back to Jardín the next day. I would arrive just in time to bring in the new year with my beloved village. My body was begging for coke, but I knew my decision to be sober was a choice between life and death. As we rolled through the mountains towards Jardín, the chemical smell of coke invaded my nose. We were going through an area where coke was being made deep in the mountains. My body went into a full-blown reaction as if I had just used. My heart pounded and my palms were sweating profusely. My desire for coke felt like a monster inside me roaring to be released. I wondered if this is how Alex had felt about heroin as I recalled the incident in that bathroom the night I disappeared from rehab. I knew that I could never touch it again. Not one bump, not one line, not even once. Just one bump meant a door would open for me to dive into the kilo, and if I did that, there was a high probability I would never make it back out again. I knew that for New Year's Eve, I had to be completely sober. I knew that what I was walking into by returning to Jardín, all the temptations and triggers, including the guilt and shame I carried on my back from the consequences of my poor decisions and the people I had hurt. Smelling booze sent my body into a full-blown reaction because both habits were married as codependents. And I had to choke both of them at the same time, at least until my divorce with cocaine was finalized. Just one drink to bring in the new year would open the door for that monster to barge through. If I chose coke, I would be choosing to die, and I wasn't ready to die. I had more adventures to discover on this incredible path I chose. I felt like I had more to give the world and more for the world to give to me. I arrived in Jardín around noon, and people whispered and stared. Faculty members who had been a part of the crucifixion committee glared down their noses, while other faculty members with whom I had partied hung their heads and looked the other way, knowing they had let me take the hit for our group as a whole. I held my head high, sober, owning my mistakes, and also knowing that on my way down, I had not taken anyone else with me. Mostly, I think they were surprised that I came back to show my face after being humiliated, especially so soon. I found a hotel room to drop my bag in, and a private place to wish Sebas and other friends a Happy New Year. Giovanni saw me walk by and texted me. He wanted to know the full story about what happened. "Come party for old time's sake. Epic New Year's party," was his text. I knew this temptation would be present, and I had prepared myself. There could be no one last times. By the time 9 p.m. rolled around, the entire park was filled with people drinking and dancing, and this party would last at least 24 hours to bring in the new year. I couldn't be around for that, and I wouldn't. I retreated to the refuge of my quiet hotel room by the time the party really kicked off. Juancho texted me asking if I was back in Jardín, and then he came to see me. While we sat on my balcony talking, he shared with me what he had heard. I told him the truth, all the truth, as he deserved nothing less. He was excited that he had made it to the second round of his application process, and within a couple of weeks, I found donations from a sponsor that would cover all his expenses in Bogotá for his second round of tryouts. Little did I know at the time that Juan would end up getting accepted into this program, would go to Armenia, Georgia to finish high school in Europe, and then would win a full scholarship for an anthropology degree at University of Oklahoma. That was one of the great things that came from my time spent there, in spite of mistakes I had made. I stayed inside all night, writing in my journal about all the things I needed to let go of to close my chapter in Jardín. I woke up the next morning to see the news that Giovanni had been murdered in the night. Sometime around 3 a.m., he was stabbed 40 times and left to die in a pool of blood outside the bar where we always partied. Had I not safeguarded my life, I would have been there with him, as I had so many times. I guess his big boss came to collect a debt, but he didn't have the money because he consumed the product he was supposed to sell. He was an addict. He left behind his wife and 8-year-old special needs daughter. The news broke my heart, but it also reminded me of Alex and the fate he shared with me the day before I escaped rehab so many years ago. I had chosen life, not a moment too soon. I left on New Year's Day morning to begin making my trek south toward the border of Ecuador. I wanted to take time to see important places along the way, starting with Manizales in the main coffee region of Colombia, 6 hours south of Jardín. The first morning that I woke up there at my hostel, I ventured into the town center where I found the famous cathedral and Plaza Simón Bolívar. I paid $3 for a tour that would take me up a winding staircase to the tallest point of the tower. It's the tallest cathedral in the country of Colombia. And from the top, I drank in the view of Manizales. I also saw Pereira, Armenia, and Buena Vista while I was in that region. After I explored Eje Cafetero, I made it to Popayán, the White City. I was sitting at a table outside of the Juan Valdez coffee shop, drinking my coffee, eating a piece of their famous chocolate cake, and writing, when this guy and his daughter sat down at a table next to me to start a conversation. It turned out he was a famous singer in Colombia. He had me pull up his YouTube videos and played songs for me on his guitar. Unfortunately, I don't remember what his name was, but it was definitely an unforgettable moment to take in the stark contrast of the striking blue sky above the whitewashed colonial buildings that lined the streets while this handsome Colombian man serenaded me with his beautiful music. The next day, I studied a map, choosing my path from there to the border and making decisions about where I wanted to stop along the way. My original idea would have taken me through a bigger town called Cali, but my intuition told me that was a bad idea. Although it is the salsa dancing capital of the world, rich with Colombian history, it is also the violent home of the Cali cartel. I knew I would be hit from all sides, with teenagers competing with one another for my cocaine business, and I knew I was not strong enough to withstand such temptation. My life depended on my journey to not see Cali at that point. I paid for a $12 ticket straight from where I was in Popayán all the way to the border town of Ipiales, which would be my last stop in Colombia before crossing the border into Ecuador. I was all geared up to have my border crossing adventure. I planned on staying in Ipiales for a couple of nights. There was a sacred temple there that other travelers had mentioned, and while they shared their experience, something in me had gone ping, ping. A bus station vendor snagged me and stuck me on the last available seat inside of a microbus, in the front seat next to the driver, and he even had to clear his personal things to make room for me. I've always loved the front seat on bus rides, not only to mitigate motion sickness, but because of my front row seat to the beautiful views. I was busy taking pictures, rolling along, in love with the glorious mountain views, and elated about the thought of exploring every square inch of the paradise Colombia had to offer. The bus driver tried to converse casually with me and offered me snacks and Coca-Cola, which I politely declined, pretending I couldn't speak Spanish. About 7 hours into our trip, the bus driver pulled into the bus terminal of a small town called Pasto, where several passengers got off. I heard the bus driver tell someone we would be there for at least 15 minutes, so I ran inside to go pee and get some plantain chips. I came back out and leisurely scrolled through the pictures on my phone of the scenery from my front seat view. The driver finally climbed up into his seat and off we went, navigating tight turns of local traffic before finally coasting onto the highway, heading straight into the mountains. "So where do you want to go?" the bus driver suddenly asked me in Spanish. I thought maybe I had misunderstood, so I asked in Spanish, "Excuse me?" "Where do you want to go?" he repeated. My stomach started to turn itself inside out. Suddenly, I spoke perfect Spanish. Well, I bought a ticket to Ipiales, so how about you take me there?" He kind of chuckled. He looked over at me. "I'm not taking you to Ipiales." All the hairs on my arm stood up. "Look in the back," he said. I did. Every other passenger on the bus had gotten off. I was all alone with this jackass who was now threatening me and speeding down the highway. "Let me out right now," I demanded. My voice was shaky, but I was trying to control it so he wouldn't see any emotion. "I want to be alone with you. I promise I will leave you with a souvenir you will remember forever," he said, just like the cop the night before I fled Jardín. This time, I was sober. "Pull over and let me out right fucking now," I said. I demanded in Spanish. "I promise you will love it," he said. "Look at those mountains that are so close. We can have mountains all to ourselves, and nobody will hear us, señorita." Yuck, the cop promised I would love it too. After the incident in Jardín with the officer who assaulted me, I had seen a shiny switchblade for sale in the window of a local shop and decided to always carry it in my bra. Oh, thank fuck I had that knife in my bra. I had to threaten him, and I had to threaten him so hard it scared the shit out of him. I didn't know if this guy had a knife or a gun. Just against him, I knew I would win. I could even kill him if I had to. But if he took me someplace where it was me against more than one man, I wouldn't stand a chance. It was my life or his. I chose mine, and I had to continue to do it in such a way that he needed to fear for his. So much adrenaline was plunging through my veins that I felt like I had the strength to lift a car. As these thoughts flashed through my head, we rolled farther and farther from town. The scenery flashed by, along with flashbacks of the scenery that whizzed by the day that Oscar kidnapped me in his truck. I didn't have a knife then. I didn't have a fighting chance. This time, I did, and I had a weapon. I remember how Oscar's sweat smelled when it dripped onto my face during the rape, and this time my story would have a different ending. I remembered the day that I looked over at Oscar while he ground his teeth and threatened to kill me. Back then, I thought that if I had a knife, I could stick it in his neck. I couldn't do it then, but I could do it now. I knew that I had to be calculated and quick. He glanced to his left out the window, and in a split second, I snatched the knife from inside my left bra cup. At that moment, an angel called his cell phone. Between his answered phone call and the low noise of the radio, he didn't hear me pop the blade out. This time, I would have the last word. Nobody would ever take anything from me again. He ended the call, and I prepared myself to attack, knowing I had to measure my force so that I wouldn't stick the knife all the way in his neck. When he hung up his phone, I startled him with my threat, pulling my knife and holding it to his neck. "Pull over now or I will fucking kill you," I yelled in his ear. I had no idea whether his reaction would be to take my threat seriously, or to try to take my weapon from me, or pull out one of his own. But based on his response, I was fully prepared to stick the whole knife in his neck in a split second if I needed to. Luckily, I scared the shit out of him. He swerved all over the highway and immediately pulled over. "Tranquila, I was just messing with you," he pleaded. When he stopped the bus, he put his hands up. "Miss, I was just playing with you. I would never harm a woman." I knew I could not get out of the bus first because I risked him speeding off with the only few belongings I had. "Your bags are right behind your seat, miss. I swear to God I wouldn't hurt a woman. I have daughters." As soon as he got out, I also got out with the knife still in my hand. I guess while we were stopped in Cali, he moved my bags from the very back of the bus where they usually get stuffed to the floor right behind my seat. He didn't want to have to take me all the way to the border since I was his only passenger. But that was something he should have mentioned at the bus stop. He should have said, "Miss, you're my only passenger. Here's a refund for the rest of your ticket. Catch a different bus heading to Ipiales at a different time with more passengers." But he hadn't said that. Now, he pulled out my bags and dropped them to the ground. He apologized again for scaring me and asked if he could take me back into town. I told him I wanted a refund for the rest of my ticket, and that I wanted him to leave or I would kill him and drive myself to the border in a bus. He pulled a bill from his pocket, dropped it on my bags, and left, profusely apologizing the whole time. There I was, alone on the side of the dusty road, about 3 miles from the town I had just passed through. What if he comes back for me? What if he comes back with more men? All I knew was that I had to walk back into town with all my shit loaded on my back. The whole time I kept looking back over my shoulder to see if anyone was trailing behind. Hadn't I felt like this for years, though? Feeling ghosts breathe down my neck and villains spy on me from around corners? On my long walk back into town, I chuckled at the contemplation of whether that asshole would have been as scared if I had pulled out a dildo instead of a knife, and I vowed that one day I would carry a dildo in my shoulder satchel to try my theory. An hour later, I found a shitty hotel on the outskirts of town. The only thing that mattered to me is that it had a deadbolt, so I could feel safe that night. The little hotel was so gross that I was only charged $4 for a single room with no Wi-Fi, no hot water, and plenty of cockroaches to keep me company. I was fine to dump all my shit on the floor, sleep on top of the bed fully clothed in what I'd worn that day, and head out the next morning to get to the border. I just wanted to feel safe for a few moments. My nerves were smoked. My trauma trigger had been tripped, and I had mentally prepared myself to kill that man. Adrenaline still surged rampantly through my body. I was desperate for a release. The first place my mind went was, I want a double shot of liquor and a fat line of Colombian-grade cocaine, but I knew that under no circumstances could I alter my mind. I knew myself well enough to have a genuine understanding that if I introduced substances, there would be no limit. Instead, I had to protect myself. My life, my mind. I had to start making different decisions. My life at that point depended on my decision to stay sober. Not only because of the risk of a bender, but I had to stay aware of my surroundings given what just happened. I still needed a release. After I locked my room, I went outside to smoke a cigarette. I took a drag off my cheap menthol and was looking off in the distance when a broken sign a few blocks away caught my eye. Enough of the letters were lit up for me to read. Tattoo. A tattoo, that would give me my release. Even though I was trauma triggered, I was proud of defending myself from that bus driver. I got a piece of my power back by recreating the ending to a former story. I was overwhelmingly grateful for the tragedy in my life at 20 because had Oscar not put me through that, I wouldn't have been prepared to defend myself in the situation I just survived. I wanted a tattoo that denoted the symbolism of the story I recreated my ending to. I wanted a colorful butterfly with a Latin phrase around it that means, nevertheless, she persisted, but in Latin. And yes, I did. People following my journey on social media would often message me with travel questions, fear-based questions that I commonly heard were, aren't you scared of being kidnapped? What if there are bad guys in your path who target women traveling alone? Kidnappings and assaults happen in parking lots a few blocks down the street from one's backyard in small towns like Yukon, Oklahoma. Bad things can happen anywhere to anyone, so why not live my life regardless? What Oscar did to me didn't hold me back, and this guy's attempt to harm me damn sure wouldn't either. Besides, now I knew that I could face anything and plow my way through it. So I persisted. I persisted through 4 hours of tattooing done by the hand of a 17-year-old boy who was just starting his tattoo business. I didn't care that he was new. It was an honor to be one of his first experiences. I showed him what I wanted, and I told him to let his creativity flow. Just be sure that he used clean needles. My tattoo came out crooked, with uneven wings and ink that permanently ran into my white skin on the underside of my bicep. But since it was the flesh of my arm hidden by my armpit, I didn't even care. It is still stained there, and I still don't care. My wings aren't perfect either, and the road to finding them has been rocky, but they are mine, and I know that they are both beautiful and perfect enough. The tattoo gave me what I needed. Beyond the message of persistence, it helped me have an energy release. I could finally come down. I slept well that night with all my little cockroach friends. The next day, I woke with a renewed view about life. It was time to go see the magical temple and then brave the border into Ecuador.